Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Mike Natter. I work with Quentin in our Huntington branch, and I see a few people that I invited on here, so welcome. And take advantage of this because this is good stuff. I've been doing this 20 years, and Colin taught me so much stuff that I didn't know. So pay attention, take notes. This is good stuff.
The course is actually Mike's idea. He was speaking with Dan, someone from Caris Management. We said, we've been doing, he's a loan officer over 20 years. I'm going on 20 years. And we said, you know what? We've never really had a course or education on understanding appraisals, something that we look at every single day of our jobs. And sure enough, we didn't get a lot better at it in 20 years. There's still some stuff we missed. We presume that there's some realtors that still don't understand some of the intricacies. So the gentleman we have on today, understanding appraisals and appraisal basics, Colin Never. He is the managing director and the compliance manager of Caris Management Group, who Caris Management is a appraisal management company. He's been a certified appraiser going on 20 years. So he's got a ton of experience. He oversees, and I would imagine, Colin, how many appraisals do you look at in a day or a week?
Well, we did a little over 60,000 appraisals last year, and we're now licensed in 31 states. Now that I guess the other Quentin Hardy here, Dan Mayer.
I don't know why,
but he's now him and his department is now with us, and so we'll be doing that many more. Yeah, we're in 31 states across the country now. We have well, just on our side, we have a little over 3,600 appraisers. And Dan, I don't know how many he has on his side, but yeah, we've been growing significantly, founded in 2013. Yeah, I've seen it all, I think. Well, I thought I'd
a lot of appraisals. So you know what, then I'll turn it over to you. Let's make that the official introduction. So Colin, take it away and go ahead and educate us.
All right, great. I appreciate it, guys. So, and Dan Mayer also is the representative here for y'all's region. So, let's, all right, can everybody see that?
Did you want to say anything, Dan?
No, I just want to introduce myself. I am Quentin's right-hand person when it comes to questions, and Mike's, I'm their account executive. I have over 25 years experience in lending and also appraisals. I've been in the appraisal management business since it switched over back in the 2008 era when the real estate collapsed. So I switched over to appraisal management at that time. I have a lot of experience in the lending side also, and I'll just like to introduce myself and thank you all for attending, and we'll turn it over to Colin, and you guys can be educated.
So here we go. So this presentation that we're going to give today, I've been giving different versions of it for about 13 years now. It is geared towards how to read an appraisal, because a lot of appraisals can be 45 or 50 pages long, and so they can be a little bit overwhelming when you're not sure what you should be really reading or looking at, and also how to prepare a packet, and then if all that doesn't work out, how we write up rebuttals to be the most successful. So I'm going to get going today. I'm going to skip over that first part. So we're going to get right into it. So what is the definition of an appraisal? An appraisal is an unbiased estimate of market value. It is the most probable sale price, very important term we'll cover a little bit more later, based on the analysis of the subject property using the three approaches to value: the sales comparison approach, the cost approach, and the income approach. What most lenders and underwriters really focus on is the sales comparison approach, exactly what it sounds like. The appraiser will use comparable sales in order to come up with their reconciled value. Rebuttals. Now, before we get into writing a rebuttal, what is the best line of defense? A good offense. What do I mean by that? That means whenever the appraiser calls to schedule an inspection, or anytime during that process that you feel you want to talk to the appraiser about something, you should have some good notes to prepare to give to them. Leave a packet on the counter for their inspection, or meet them at the property, or when they call to schedule it, hey, can I have your email so I can send over some information? And the appraiser is going to see a lot of the obvious things. They're going to see the hardwood floors, they're going to see the granite countertops or the quartz countertops, or all the obvious renovations to the kitchen and baths and things like that. But there's so many other things that you could mention to the appraiser because of your experience as real estate agents in the market. Keep in mind that an appraiser when they are very comfortable and been doing appraisals in a market for years and years, they may only do 1 or 2 appraisals in a particular subdivision all year. And so they're only going in that one house, whereas real estate agents, you're going in many, many other homes with your buyers. Before you put a seller's home on the market, you might be checking out open houses. You're seeing a lot more of the inside of homes than an appraiser may be. So some of the good information for an appraiser. And then another practice that we're seeing more and more is appraisers are calling us up and saying, hey, I'm having a little bit of trouble with my value. I called the listing agent, didn't really help my value any, but there is a pending sale that's going to be closing soon. Can we hold off on the closing for a few days or push this back a few days to see what this ends up closing for? Because I think if it closes for what it's listed for, it's really going to help me. So the appraisers are coming back to us. Maybe the real estate agents can be more proactive and say, hey, I have a feeling that this one's going to close a little over the asking price, or it's going to close at the asking price, and it's going to help our cause. So any kind of communication between the appraiser, the real estate agent, the loan officer, when it comes to those pending sales that are going to close, can really, really help, especially in a market like we've been in over the past 14 months with the pandemic. I'm sure everyone's had some concerns about their value issues, and that's one thing that can really help. But when I come back to the fact that real estate agents usually go in more homes than the appraisers do in every market, what really can be affected is the functionality, the quality condition, just the feel of the home. Most appraisers, in fact, all appraisers, they use MLS photos in order to come up with their quality and condition ratings. And if you're not familiar with quality and condition ratings, we really need to familiarize ourselves with those. They've been around since 2010. The Uniform Appraisal Data Set, which was created by Fannie Mae. It's how appraisers grade the quality and the condition of homes. And I'm going to harp on that for the next hour because it's the most overlooked facet of an appraisal and can have such a huge effect on the outcome of the value of the outcome of the appraisal report. So when I say functionality, maybe our subject property has 9-foot smooth ceilings or something like that, and the home right down the street that you know the appraiser is going to consider as a comparable property because it just sold or it's on the subject street or something. Maybe it has like 8-foot popcorn ceilings, or maybe it has a water tower in the backyard or something like that. Information, interior functionality or external obsolescence that might negatively affect those comparables that the appraiser is not going to notice simply by looking at MLS photos or just by driving by and taking a photo of the outside of the house. Appraisers are required to do that. They're required to drive by a home, but there's just so many things that they can miss that it would be great if they were brought to the appraiser's attention in that packet. So what I'm trying to focus on, we see a lot of the good things that agents do, where they write down the comps and they might provide the MLS listings to the appraiser with notes on them of the comps that they want to use. But you also need to be fair and know that if a property just closed in the past month or two and it's very, very close to the subject and on the outside kind of looks like the subject, you should realize they're going to consider that. So if you don't want them to, you need to give them a reason why they shouldn't be using it. Because again, the MLS photos can fool appraisers all the time. All MLS photos, in my opinion, what I've seen over the past couple of years, look fantastic. And then when you take a closer look, if you actually inspect that property, you can see chipping and peeling paint, and maybe foundation issues, and maybe the roof doesn't have much longer to go. But anyway, so that's the functionality, and we're going to get to the quality and condition as well in those ratings. I think I can. So here are the quality and condition ratings right here. These should be in every single appraisal report that you see. If they're not, they should be. And what you see here is the condition ratings, and these are the definitions. C1 is new construction. C2 is after a family has moved into the home and lived there for a few months, up until maybe a couple of years, depending on how well they take care of their house. It would be a C2. And these are the definitions that go with these ratings. And then you also have the quality conditions as well. Like Q1 That's probably like Tiger Woods' house or something like that down there in Florida. Everything is imported. Everything is as nice can be. And then you have all the way to Q6. So you have C1 through C6 and then Q1 through Q6. And the Q6, that's like a cardboard house or something like that. And then when we go back up to the condition, my touch screen isn't working too well. When you go up to the condition, the C6, that's probably not a habitable home. As you can see here, the improvements have substantial damage or deferred maintenance with deficiencies or defects. So when we look at the grid, which we're going to be looking at here shortly, when we look at the grid, we're really going to pay a lot of attention to those condition and quality ratings. So, all right, so also whenever you're making that packet, preparing the packet for the appraiser, the updates and repairs with the dates, it's very important to have all of that information because at the bottom of the first page of the appraisal report, the appraiser has to answer specific questions. Some of those questions are, have the kitchen and baths been updated or renovated? On the condition and quality ratings page at the bottom, it also gives definitions of what an updated home is and what a renovated home is. Those are two completely different definitions, obviously. So give dates and all the information of the materials that were used and everything that was used, because the appraiser has to answer questions. Was the home updated or renovated in the past 12 months, in the last 1 to 5 years, or in the last 6 to 10 years? So if you have the dates of when perhaps the baths were renovated, remodeled, another word for renovated, were remodeled in 2017, provide that information, because the appraiser is supposed to be answering those questions. And if they can't answer those questions properly, they might just skip over that, and that can affect the quality and the condition of the subject, which then affects the adjustments made to the comps. Any questions so far, Quentin, about any of that?
No, sir. Nothing in the chat.
All right, great. So multiple offers, question mark, question mark, question mark. We will address that towards the end. That used to be a very simple question to answer, but we all know, I think, with what's going on in the current market, we're going to have to take that a little more in depth. So here is the grid. This is what appraisers refer to as the grid. And whenever a real estate agent or a loan officer or one of my fellow staff members asks me to take a look at an appraisal report, this is where I go first. This is the meat and potatoes of the appraisal. Everything else just is kind of based off of this. And so to the right here, you see the market condition adjustments, the bracketing, the adjusted sale prices, the price per square foot, which is also something that we talk about a lot with realtors. These are all the things that we're going to address that I see most of all. So the first thing I'm going to look at when I see, when I take a look at an appraisal is two things. I'm going to look at the proximity to the subject property of the comps, which is right up here. So this is the subject property, and all of these are all the characteristics, the 16 plus characteristics of the subject property. And then comp number 1, comp number 2, comp number 3. Most of the time we have 4, 5, or 6 comps in an appraisal report. Those will be on additional pages. But what we'll look at is to see what the complexity of this assignment was. It's easy to determine by how far away the comps are, because if the comps are 3, 4, 8, 10, 15 miles away, which we see sometimes in more rural areas and smaller towns, we know that this was not the simplest of appraisal reports, appraisal assignments. But this particular appraisal, the reason I chose this one was because it touches on all the facets that I really like to discuss in my presentations. But this appraisal report was obviously not too difficult. Comps 2 and 3 are obviously in the subject subdivision. They're very, very close. You can tell by how close they are in proximity. Comp number 1 is 3/4 of a mile away, which still isn't bad at all. The reason I believe this one was chosen, keep in mind that this appraisal was done in June of 2020, June of last year. So this comp right here is only 3 months old. These comps 2 and 3, which were chosen because they're in the subject subdivision. And we're going to also talk about how appraisers choose their comparable properties shortly. But these comps are a little bit older. These comps were from March. So I'm sorry, this date should be, Yeah, the adjustments are from 620. So we see adjustments here. And how do appraisers make their market condition adjustments, also known as time adjustments? Time adjustments are based on what the trends are in the market and how an appraiser calculates it. So this form, which used to be required, this is called the 1004 MC, the 1004 Market Condition Addendum, which is no longer required by Fannie Mae, but most appraisers still complete it because they have to research this information anyways. So there's really no reason not to include it in your appraisal report since you're still doing the work anyway. So appraisers will make time adjustments based on this addendum or some other way that they're using their local MLS in order to calculate the time adjustment. So the reason this particular comp number one, had a smaller time adjustment is because it was a very recent sale, whereas these two were much, much longer. This should be 12/20. That's why that doesn't make sense. It says 6/20. This should be December of 2020. And so this comp sold in September of 2020, and these sold in March of 2020. So these have larger time adjustments because obviously they're older comps, and the appraiser based those off this 1004 MC. Now the 1004 MC, how do we read the 1004 MC? The vast majority of appraisers are still including this in their appraisal assignments. And anytime in this particular type of market, a very, very strong market, whenever appraisers are marking stable and not making any time adjustments for very dated comps, we're asking them to include the 1004 MC in their appraisal to show that it's actually a stable market, because most markets are strong and increasing right now. But how would you read this 1004 MC? So you have a 7 to 12 month grid right here. This column is 7 to 12 months ago. So these are comparable sales. There were 45 comparable sales 7 to 12 months ago. And then the prior 4 to 6 months ago, there were 10 comparable sales. And then over the last 90 days, there have been 21 comparable sales in the subject's market. Now, this is a 6-month column, and these are 3-month columns. So to accurately be able to determine the trends of the number of comparable sales, you have to divide that 45 by 2 to accurately portray what these two columns, these 3-month columns, say. But the most important row that we're going to look at is right here where you see my cursor, the median comparable sale price. That's the most important thing.
Hey,
so
Colin,
yes.
Real quick, but there's only one question. I know your screen is as large as it can get. Is there any possibility of zooming in a little bit more on some of this data because we can't really read it? Or is there a copy of it that we can share with everyone?
I can certainly forward you. Let's see, can you see my screen right now? Is that better? Quentin?
I think that's a lot better. Maybe you want to go down a little bit more, like not zoom in, take it out a little bit more. What zoom are you at, Colin?
I am at, I don't know what I'm at. How's that look?
Better.
Does that look better? Okay. Median comparable sale price. So the row that we're focused mostly on, and Quinn, when I'm done, I can send you this presentation if you would like, along with the condition and quality ratings once we discuss those as well, so that everybody has a copy of it. The median comparable.
That'd be great. Anybody who wants a copy, then just email me and I'll send it to you.
There we go. There we go. So how to read the 1004 MC, the most important row that we're going to look at is what it says right here, the median comparable sale price. So prior 7 to 12 months ago, the median comparable sale price in this market was for comparable sales was $185,000. In the prior 4 to 6 months, it did not change. It was still at $185,000. But over the past 90 days, it jumped up to $199,000. So the appraiser marked an increasing market right here. So anytime you see a 1004 MC in the appraisal report, and you see that the appraiser marked an increasing market right here, and their comps are dated, such as these, and they didn't make any time adjustments, that is a red flag. That's definitely something that we would want to mention in the rebuttal. The appraiser has increasing market marked in their 1004 MC. They're using data comps and did not make time adjustments. So that I think most appraisers would be very impressed if they saw that in a rebuttal. So we're going to go, I'm going to zoom back out so we can see my my right side. So any questions on the 1004 MC and in the time adjustments that appraisers are making? Okay, I'm going to move on. Bracketing is the next thing that we're going to discuss. So what is bracketing? Bracketing is like the mess hall. You're not going to see it in the military manual, but it's something that, so you're not going to see that in USPAP or any other regulations that appraisers have to follow, but bracketing is a practice that all appraisers use. And what that means is, other than the time adjustments, because the time adjustments are always going to be what we call across the board adjustments, they're all going to be one direction. They're all going to be, in a very, very strong market, they're going to be all positive adjustments. In a market like we were in 2008, 2009, 10 with the recession, those would be all negative adjustments, which we did see a lot back then. But with all the other characteristics of the subject, the appraiser is going to do their very best to bracket. So what does bracketing mean? The bracketing means that the appraiser wants either on every single row, every single characteristic that they're taking into account when they're making their adjustments, they want at least one comp that doesn't have any adjustments on that line, or two that are positive and one that is negative, or two that are negative and one that is positive, or something. They just don't want all negative or all positive adjustments across the board, again, other than the time adjustments, because what that does is that prevents the appraiser from understating or overstating a value. If, for instance, on the gross living area for this particular appraisal, this property is 1,544 square feet. That's the subject property right there, 1,544 square feet. For this particular appraisal, the appraiser used two comps that were larger, so you can see 1655 and 1774, and then one comp that was smaller. So we had two negative adjustments on comps 1 and 2, and then a positive adjustment on comp 3. And that goes for every characteristic that the appraiser is measuring. So if the subject property was for instance, a C2, a condition 2 rating, you wouldn't want a whole bunch of C3 ratings, because then you'd have a whole bunch of massive positive adjustments potentially. So you always want to be able to bracket. The age, age is kind of tricky, because age is also really thrown in with condition very often. So it's not something that appraisers stress. So we did see that the subject property here is 34 years old. That was not bracketed, but within reason, comp number 3 is very, very close. Question? We're good? All right, so I can't see anybody, by the way. So if anyone's raising their hands, all I have up is my actual report. We'll just
reiterate then for some of the late joiners. If anyone has a question, put it in the chat. We are monitoring the chat, and Colin will answer questions during the presentation. Just put it in the chat.
Okay. So as I said before, we're going to really talk a lot about the quality in the condition ratings, and here we go. So again, I showed you the definitions of the condition and quality ratings. Those were invented by Fannie Mae. Those are Fannie Mae's definitions. Incidentally, the appraisal report that appraisers use was created by Fannie Mae. Appraisers had nothing to do with the form that we actually use for lending purposes. But Fannie Mae really takes the reins when it comes to how they want appraisers to interpret and report on appraisals. So they came up with those definitions. I will send those to Quentin after the presentation, and he'll send those out to everybody. I strongly advise familiarizing yourselves with those definitions, because this is the most, like the biggest oversight when a realtor or a loan officer is reading an appraisal report. They just assume that the appraiser's quality and condition ratings are correct. Well, as I said before, the MLS photos can make a home that's about to fall down to the ground look like it's new construction sometimes. Those photos get better and better every year. And so, and keep in mind that that's what the appraiser is mostly using to determine their ratings for these quality and condition ratings. So a Q4
Colin,
home.
I'm waiting for you to take a breath. You talk fast. I wanted to throw in a question. What is the adjustment you use for square footage? Someone asked.
All right, great question. So it depends on the price point. And most appraisers use anywhere, depending on the price point, the area, they're going to use somewhere between 30 to 50% of the price per square foot. So you can see the price per square foot up here. The subject property was $124. These are automatically calculated in the appraiser software based on the size of the home calculated by the purchase price. So you'll see this, the comp number 1 was $120. Comp 2, 105, comp 3, 135. And so an appraiser is going to use anywhere between about 25% to 50%. In more luxury areas, they may use closer to 50%. This appraiser for this report, she used $40 a square foot. But that's where bracketing is so important, because not to sound dismissive or anything, but when it comes down to it, if an appraiser properly brackets, it shouldn't matter what they use for their price per square foot adjustment, for their gross living area adjustment, because like she used $40 a square foot here. Well, if she had used $150 a square foot, well, yeah, it would have been great for comp number 3. Comp number 3 would have come up, but comps number 1 and 2 would have driven down even further. So that's something we see when rebuttals are sent over to us all the time, where they explain the appraiser only used $60 a square foot or $70 a square foot, but the price per square foot in this market is $300 a square foot. Well, okay, well, let's look at $300 a square foot. And next thing you know it, if we had sent that through to the appraiser, it would have actually decreased the value of the appraisal. So we do review all of our rebuttals before we send them on to our appraisers, because we want to protect protect the all parties. And sometimes we'll just send it back and say, are you sure you want to send this to the appraiser? Sometimes they think the value is too high. I know that's rare. But yeah, I do talk fast because there's a lot to get through. Sorry about that, Quentin, but yeah, interrupt me anytime. But in this case, comps 1 and 2 are larger than the subject. And if the appraiser had used anything more than what she used, then the adjusted values, if you see down here, the adjusted values are 2023 for comp 1, 185.9 for comp 2, and then 2021 for comp 3. If the appraiser had used like $75 a square foot opposed to 40, then comp number 3 would have risen up a little bit, but comps 1 and 2 would have driven down even further. I will say that in this appraisal, the purchase price was $192,000. The appraiser appraised the home for $200,000. I talked to her at length before I decided to use this report for my presentation, just to get more feelers of what she was thinking about when she was appraising the home. And I did ask her, so if the purchase price was $205, what do you think? She's like, yeah, I think I probably would have gotten $205. And so the reason I want to mention that is because one of the subjects that a lot of realtors always bring up to me is, how come so many of my appraisals are coming in on contract price? So appraisers have to take continuing education every year, and we have to take one of the classes we have to take every other year is called USPAP. It's Understanding Professional Appraisal Practice. And so it's kind of like our ethics class that we have to take as a reminder of what we do and how we do it. And I even had a USPAP instructor tell me one time, if you're within, as an appraiser, if you're within 2 or 3% of a contract price without pushing, you should probably figure out a way to go ahead and get it. That was in a USPAP class with about 70 appraisers. So a good appraiser will take a contract as one test of market value. So if they're within a few $1,000s of that without pushing the appraisal, then they should be trying to get to that contract, because that's what the appraiser's job is to determine what the market value is. Now, we are in a very strange market right now with tremendous numbers of multiple offers, and we kind of start to get in the highest bidder or an auction type of situation sometimes. But during normal times, an appraiser should consider that appraisal as one test of market value, and that door kind of swings both ways. If let's say we have a contract price of $200,000 and an appraiser could easily get to $205, well, they might think, well, I do have this contract for 200, so I guess I'll just bring it in at 200 because, again, that is one test of market value. So that's why you may see during normal real estate times environment, you see so many appraisals come in on the contract price. Any questions on any of that? So the adjusted sale price, so we're going to move on to number 3, the adjusted sale price. That's the number at the bottom after the appraiser has made all their adjustments to their grid, and that's the adjusted sale price. This is what the appraiser uses down here at the bottom to determine their reconciled value at the bottom of that second page, where it talks about if the appraisal is as is or if there's repairs. That's where we all want to go to, right? See what the value and are there any repairs required. If it's as is, we got our value, we're good. So something that has come across a lot more recently, which is kind of a misnomer, is that appraisers average their adjusted values to come up with their reconciled value. Appraisers do not average their adjusted sale prices. They weight them. And in some cases, and even though an appraiser might have 5, 6, 7 comps in their appraisal report, they may give all their weight to comp number 1 or maybe comp number 3, depending on how good the comps are. If comp number 1, or let's say comp number 3, because there also is no reason, there's no order that the appraiser has to follow. I know it makes sense. It's reasonable to assume that comp number 1 in the appraisal report is what the appraiser believes is the best comp in the report, but there's nothing in USFAP or anywhere else that says that has to be true. So oftentimes an appraiser might give all their weight in their appraisal to maybe comp number 3. If comp number 3 is the only comp in the subject subdivision and all the other comps in the appraisal report are miles away, and comp number 1 just closed recently and all the other comps are dated, let's say 6 or 7 or 8 months old, then it's reasonable for the appraiser to put almost all their weight on comp number 3. And so if comp number 1 adjusted to 163, comp 2 178, and comp 3 at 200, a lot of times we're seeing appraisers coming in at 200,000 because that's the one good comp in the appraisal report. And they should be explaining how they weight their comps in their reconciliation section. A lot of times we see canned comments that say something like the appraiser gave most consideration to the sales comparison approach because it's the best indication of the current market. Total canned comment, total cop out. We don't like to see that. We like to see how appraisers weighted their comps, especially if they're coming in under contract prices.
Colin, did you answer? There's a question out there. What is the adjustment you use for square footage?
Yeah, I think Quentin had just mentioned that. So
sorry about that. I had to walk away, so I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate you bringing it to my attention. Yeah, appraisers will use somewhere between 20 to 50% most of the time, depending on the price point. Obviously, they're going to use a different number for a $200,000 price point than a $500,000 or $1 million price point. But really, what they're trying to do, they're going to use. Just to go back to that question again, give a little more information, that what appraisers really want to do, they want a nice tight range of adjusted values. They don't want, like here we have 185.9 is our low and 202.1 or 202.3 is our high. That's a pretty good percentage range, $17,000. So that's not too bad. But appraisers want that to be as tight as possible. The tighter they can get that adjusted value, the more dependable that appraisal report is to an underwriter who's using that to make their decisions. A lot of times we see really wide ranges on those adjusted values. We might see, sometimes we'll see where the low end is 185,000 and we might have a high end of 290,000. And so what the appraiser is telling us is the home is worth somewhere between 185,000 and 290,000. Well, that's just great. Thanks so much. Sometimes they're not worth the paper they're printed on. So we will go back to the appraiser and be like, there's got to be, is there anything you can use here to make a tighter range, make different adjustments, because it's not making a whole lot of sense with such a wide range. So I'm going to go. Another question that we get all the time is, do you have a lot of basements, Quentin? A lot of basement homes up there?
Yeah, we do. As a matter of fact, Joanne Minkoff is on the call. She's a big fan of basements, but we do get quite a few homes in basements in certain geographies.
Okay, so I'm gonna cover basements real quick. So this house is a 6 total room, 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom, 1,544 square foot ranch home. Very typical run-of-the-mill ranch home. Let's just pretend that this home is also on a full finished basement with a rec room, a bedroom, and a bathroom in the basement. Fully finished, same quality as the rest of the home. That is not, in appraisal world, a 3,000 square foot home with 3 baths. That is also, even though it's finished to the same quality as the rest of the home, it's still a 6 total room, 3 bedroom, 2 bath home, 1,544 square feet. Right here is where the appraiser would address the basement, right below where it says basement and finished rooms below grade. They would have 1,544 square feet, and then they'd have 1,544 FIN, 1,544 finished. And then right below here in this space where it says rooms below grade, there would be 1 RR for 1 rec room, 1 BD for 1 bedroom, and 1 BA for 1 bath. Now, there may be some comparables that the appraiser feels they need to use that don't have basements. They're on crawl space or slab. You're going to have some massive adjustments down here, or you should have some huge adjustments in these spaces right here if these are all on crawl spaces and slabs. The appraiser definitely needs to have 1 or 2 homes on basements in order to determine what adjustments they need to make. But you're going to have some really big adjustments here. But what we see I get emails from borrowers all the time saying, hey, my home has 3 baths. Why does it only say 2? It's because it's below grade. Anything below the threshold of the front door and the main living areas, anything below that is considered to be below grade, even if it's not below the actual grade of the land around the house. If it's below the threshold of the front door, which is, if you have a split foyer home, then you go down, then that's considered to be basement. With split level homes, that's a little bit trickier. And as long as the appraiser is comparing apples to apples, and as long as they're not considering one split level home as being all above grade and then the subject property having a basement, as long as they're consistent throughout the report, that's all Fannie Mae really looks for when it comes to split level homes. But when we talk about basements, these numbers won't change no matter what they do to the basement, because this is above grade room count and gross living area. And then they have to separate that out. Are there any questions on any of that? Okay. So that's the grid. There's plenty of other things that you can look through. You almost want to be a mini investigator. When I look at these appraisals, when there's a problem with them, one thing I also look at is, do the adjustments make sense? And every once in a while, I'll see an adjustment that should have been positive when the appraiser made a negative adjustment. They just went the wrong way. But right here, this is the last thing I need to cover on the grid. You see that the appraiser considered the subject property to be C3 condition. That's equivalent to good condition. And comp number 1 is C3 good condition, comp 2 C3 good condition, comp 3 C3 good condition. But wait a second, why is there a $7,000 adjustment here? If the subject is C3 and comp 3 is C3, why do we have an adjustment there? Because remember that the way the appraiser rates the homes is by definition that Fannie Mae came up with. But after that, the comps are compared to the subject property. So in this case, comp number 3 had just received a brand new roof. So the appraiser made a $7,000 adjustment there because the subject property's roof was older, and they had in comp 3 had just received a new roof. So that's why that's a $7,000 adjustment. So you can still have the comps be the same ratings, whether it's quality or condition. They can still be the same ratings as the subject, but then that goes both ways. If the subject property just had a new HVAC installed, or a new roof installed, or some other good structural repairs done, and you know that the comps, maybe the HVAC is on its last legs for comp number 1, mention that in your packet. Comp number 1's HVAC looks really old, it's 18 years old or something. Then mention that in your packet, especially if our subject property just had new things done.
Got another question, Colin. Will appraisers use brick homes against frame homes? And how much of an impact does parking versus no parking make?
Okay, so in this report, the subject property had 1 garage. comp number one had 2 driveway spots, so no garage. The appraiser made a $5,000 adjustment. Parking, we see parking for if our subject has a 2-car garage, most of those are just adjustments are 10 to 15,000, maybe 20,000. In a higher price point, $500,000, you might see 30 or 40,000. It's more of a percentage than a number when it comes to parking. But the driveway spots are counted based on not having to move a car in order to get another car out. So even though you might have a driveway where you could theoretically park 8 cars, you can only park 2 side by side that can come out. So that's how appraisers count driveway position. Also with tandem garages, you might maybe tandem garages are common in your region where you can actually park 2 cars in the garage, but you can't get the front car out without moving the back car. In an appraisal report, that's a 1-car garage.
Colin.
Yep.
These guys are from New York, around New York City, so garages and driveways are much more valuable in their area.
Okay.
With urban cities like Philadelphia, New York City, and stuff like that. So
yeah,
that value or that adjustment is based upon what area the actual property is in. So it could be worth, a garage in New York City could be worth $100,000 adjustment. So
yeah. So I think Dan, since Dan does all the appraisals in y'all's area, I think he could probably do some research to look at some of his appraisals in specific areas to see what the adjustments are that appraisers are making. That's what I do in our areas. If I'm not sure about an adjustment that appraisers are making in a specific area, like Lanai's in Florida, where I don't live in Florida and I don't know every single area that appraisers are appraising in. So I'll research those areas to see what kind of adjustments appraisers are making. So that's something that because of the databases that we have, Dan has great access. So he'll be able to answer what parking means in those areas. What was the other question, Quentin, besides the parking?
The other question was, will appraisers use brick homes against frame homes?
Okay, so yes, they certainly will. And we see it all the time, probably more than not, to be honest, because it's very rare. If you have let's say your subject property is all brick, it's just, at least in all the regions, all the states that we do business in, it's uncommon for an appraiser to be able to find 3, 4, or 5 comps that are all brick. So they will use frame homes or stucco or something like that, but they'll also make, that'll be in the quality of construction, that quality rating that we keep talking about. That's where they'll make that adjustment right there. In a $400,000 price point, you would probably see somewhere between $10,000 to $15,000 per side, maybe more, maybe $20,000 per side. So if the subject property is 3-sided brick and it's being compared to a home that's all frame, then you might see a $45,000 adjustment there. And that would go, again, that would go in this quality line, this quality row right here. Or vice versa. If our subject property is frame and they're using brick homes, be very careful to make sure that the appraiser isn't saying that it's full brick when it's only maybe a brick front. We actually ran into that situation last week with a rebuttal where the realtor kept saying that the subject property was 3-sided brick, but it was actually just a brick front. And she was like, "Oh, my mistake." But it's very easy to make that mistake when you're just looking at photos on MLS. So, but if you're familiar with the area, make sure that those quality and condition ratings are accurate, because sometimes they don't make sense. The appraiser's basing it off of just looking at pictures. But that's an excellent question. So moving on, what we see most of the time in rebuttals that we will send back, for the reason that we send back rebuttals, and I'm sure Dan's the same way, that the reason we send back rebuttals most of the time is because we want it to be better before we present it to the appraiser. We want to give the best case that we can to get that value up. So a lot of times what we see is the appraiser says that the home is 1,544 square feet, but tax records say that it's 1,720. At least in the regions that we do business in, tax records are wrong most of the time. It's actually rare for tax records to be correct. There's plenty of reasons why that may be. Maybe when the home was built, the blueprints were sent in to the tax assessor's office, and then they made some changes before the home was finished. Maybe there's some additions that have been put on, but keep in mind that appraisers hand measure every home, or they're supposed to be hand measuring every home that they appraise. And how do they measure those homes? They measure the outside walls on townhomes and single family homes. They'll measure the outside walls. On condos, they will measure from the inside walls because it's the inside space that they actually own. So keep that in mind, that they should be hand measuring. I have been using a laser measurer since 2004, and I used to get accused of not measuring the home, but laser measurers are really quick. You can really bounce them off and measure really, really fast. But tax records, if you're going to debate the GLA, the measurements that the appraiser came up with, I highly recommend either using a previous appraisal. Maybe the sellers, when they purchased their home, they still have that appraisal report handy. I definitely recommend them keeping that just in case when they do sell their homes. In our regions, especially in the Southeast, we have a few companies that all they do is measure homes for realtors. One around here is called Steel Tape Measuring. They're very good. They have a very detailed diagram of the property. I've never seen them make a mistake. Those would be great to offer to the appraiser if we're questioning the GLA. Again, look at the C&Q ratings. Very, very important. Now, how does an appraiser actually search for their for comps? A lot of times we do see rebuttals. Most of the time, in fact, we see rebuttals that have 1, 2, or 3 sales in them. If an appraiser misses 3 comps, they need to find something else to do for a living. Most appraisers are just not going to miss 3 comps, but 1 is all it really takes. And sometimes appraisers do miss that 1 comp when they're completing their appraisal report. But keep in mind that if an appraiser has, let's say, 20 sales to choose from, and they need to pick 3 to 5 comps from that 20 to put into their appraisal report, they can't just use any of those 20. They have to determine which are the best 3 or 4 or 5 comps out of those 20. What are the best comps at the time of my appraisal report? So keep in mind, if you're going to go that route with a rebuttal and you're challenging that the appraiser should have used other comps, be very detailed why the comp that you're putting in the rebuttal, or maybe the 2 comps, or maybe it is 3 comps that you want the appraiser to consider, why they are better than what is in the appraisal report. And so how do appraisers choose their comps? How do they determine what are the best comps? The first thing they're going to do is search in their subject subdivision or in the subject's condo complex or high rise. And they're going to search. First, they're going to start maybe in a very active market, last 3 months. That's very uncommon with such low inventory that we've been experiencing in the past 14 months. So they'll expand to 6 months and then to 12 months. USPAP, which again is our appraisal Bible, our 2-inch thick appraisal Bible that we have to abide by and follow, allows us to actually go back 36 months. Now, only comps that are 12 months old or newer can be comps 1, 2, or 3. Appraisers can use as comps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They can go back up to 3 years. And they're only going to do that if they're really struggling to find good comps, but they're going to search those locations first. And then if they don't have what they need, enough information, they're going to start expanding that distance. Maybe they start with the school system, since school systems are so good at driving local markets. They might start with the elementary school and then expand to the middle school if they still don't have what they need, and then the high school. And then they're going to go to the overall neighborhood. Well, what is the overall neighborhood? The appraiser will spell out the overall neighborhood on the first page of the appraisal report. In the neighborhood section, they literally explain the boundaries of the subject property's neighborhood are north to this street, south to this street, east to this street, west to this street, or they might use landmarks like lakes or interstates, whatever it is. But they're spelling out what they believe is the neighborhood. So use that in areas where, if you have a unique property especially, use that overall neighborhood, since comps are going to be so rare, and use that to your advantage. Any questions? I hope we covered most of this. Why can't I use comps that are further away? Well, you certainly can, as long as there's nothing actually close by. So the appraisers are only going to expand as far as they need to find what they're looking for. Once they found enough information, what they're looking for, they're not going to go any further. Does it help for the appraiser for the realtor to be at the property? Certainly. What I highly recommend though is if you do choose to meet an appraiser out at a property, let them do their inspection first so they don't miss anything, and then after that have a very good conversation with them. You can talk about anything you want except value, and don't obviously pressure the appraiser, but feel free to discuss things that might indirectly affect the outcome of the appraisal report. The HVCC, the Home Valuation Code of Conduct, which came out years ago, it hasn't existed in several years now, but it was never meant for realtors. That code was only so that loan officers did not talk to appraisers. Realtors have always had the right to talk to an appraiser, so don't feel like you have to walk around on eggshells or anything. The new generation of appraisers, the old guard was like, I know how to do my job, leave me alone. That's really gone away. The new generation of appraisers are much more receptive of information, and they should be. The more information that they can gather, the higher the quality of the appraisal report should be. So feel free to provide the information that you think is relevant in order for the appraiser to provide a competent report.
Now, I've got another question, Colin. This one is unusual. Do clients ever come to you with complaints about appraisal contingencies in the seller's contract? And how do you handle them if so?
So yeah, so these days with so many late appraisals coming in, the only complaints I don't really get complaints. I get loan officers saying, hey, our contingency is almost up, our due diligence is almost up. And so we'll reach out to appraisers, but something that I've in the past few months, I've talked about more in depth is appraisers. There's a shortage of appraisers. There's been a shortage of appraisers ever since the pandemic hit and interest rates plummeted. And we're just trying to get our appraisals completed. But imagine a real life situation, and this is really the situation that most appraisers are in right now. Most appraisers are declining more orders than they're accepting. And most appraisers have anywhere between 15 to 30 active orders sitting on their desk. So an appraisal can take anywhere between maybe 5 or 6 hours to 3 days, depending on the complexity of it. Most appraisals take 8 to 10 hours or so on average. But if an appraiser has 20 orders on their desk and we're begging them to take our order and get it back as soon as possible, they might throw out a due date to us. But right now, until things go back to some type of normalcy, it really is just an estimate right now, because they just don't know how long that stack in front of it is going to take. I see appraisals every day come in a week early. I've seen appraisals come in a week late. It's really just an estimate right now. And in our job that we try very, very hard to do is just to set the expectations. I know that buyers and sellers, it's really tough to sell them on this, but they just need to understand we've never had a market like this. No one alive today has ever seen anything like what's been going on for the past year. And the appraisal industry is just not set up for this type of volume and this type of environment. So I know that's kind of a roundabout way of trying to answer that question. I don't really get complaints about contingencies expiring, but there certainly is a lot of pressure out there. But appraisers there's just not enough appraisers for what's been going on. And that's really the biggest obstacle that we've had to face, is that there just aren't enough appraisers right now. And we used to require a 5 business day turn time throughout the entire country, and less than 1% of our appraisals were coming in late. But then the pandemic happened, and our late appraisals certainly have increased on our end. I'm not sure about on Dan's end what his results are looking like, but with us, our late orders have certainly increased. Our turn times have increased a little bit, not too bad. We're talking about maybe 3 or 4 days in some markets, but we're still. I know that I talk with a lot of other lenders. I talk with other AMCs. We're definitely ahead of their results, but it's just a battle right now. It's just a battle right now. that answer any of that?
Yeah, I sent that message saying, does this suffice as an answer? And Francesca said, yes, thank you. So
I did my best, Francesca. Thank you. Multiple offers. Now, multiple offers, I promised that I'd get to this one. Multiple offers are tricky. And years ago, whenever someone asked me, should we tell the appraiser there were multiple offers? Absolutely. Because the reason it was so important to tell an appraiser that there were multiple offers, because back then, years ago, there was also inventory. So let's say you have 3 homes that are actively listed on one street, and the subject property that the appraiser is appraising has multiple offers, and the other 2 homes on the street haven't gotten any offers. The appraiser is going to really take those seriously and try to determine, okay, what is it about this property that is getting all this activity, all this interest, when there's these other 2 homes over here that aren't even getting any offers at all? What is it that's making this home superior? Well, right now, we're not really in a time of inventory or reasonable offers for that matter in some cases. So the multiple offer thing, I mean, gosh, we're seeing 30, 40 offers on one home in a lot of areas. Well, the seller is obviously probably going to take the highest offer or one of the higher offers. I would too if I was the seller. But what happens there is, remember the definition at the very beginning of the presentation. What is the most probable sale price? The most typical sale price is what the appraiser is supposed to determine. Well, if you have 20 offers, then ideally the appraisal should probably come in around that 10th or 11th offer, not at the 20th offer. So that is one of the reasons why we're seeing so many value issues right now, is because of the multiple bid, the multiple offer situation that we've run into. So when it comes to multiple offers right now, what I would advise is, if your subject property has had multiple offers, I would point out the other active homes nearby that haven't gotten any offers yet, and why the subject property is so superior to those, and why we have a bunch of offers and that home down the street hasn't gotten any offers yet. Because I guarantee you, the appraiser is looking at that home as an active listing and might even put it in the appraisal report, but you need to remind them, well, it's still for sale when our subject has had multiple offers. So those still multiple offers, it still can be very important to point those out to the appraiser. I would just pick and choose how to present it to the appraiser and what else is available in the market. Does the appraiser use FSBOs? Only if they're desperate. The reason appraisers don't like to use for sale by owner properties in an appraisal report is because of all the uncertainties. The appraiser's not going to know what the seller concessions are, if there were any. They're going to have a really hard time, unless the home was placed on the internet somehow, they're going to have a really hard time determining the quality and condition ratings. They're not going to have any interior photos to choose from. The appraiser is only supposed to be using arm's length transactions in the appraisal report as comps, and it's just too tough to prove that was an arm's length transaction by a willing buyer, willing seller acting in their own best interest. Who knows? Maybe it's a father to a friend to friend transaction, or a father to daughter. Who knows? So appraisers are only going to use FSBOs if they're very, very desperate. And in just the rarest of occasions. And we talked about the tax record square footage. If you're going to fill out a rebuttal discussing square footage, I highly recommend the sketch from a previous appraisal or a measuring company or something like that. But that's it. That's all I got.
wonderful. Anybody, what questions do we have that you didn't want to type into the chat? What else is left? Anybody?
Wow.
I just wanted to say one thing quickly. So this is the second time I'm in this training, but it seems like the most reoccurring, most important thing here is how important it is for the agents to know the comps, like really know the comps in the area, because so much could be missed that can affect the value.
Certainly.
Especially, I would like to add, especially when you're doing the rebuttals, the comps, I can suggest that basically a lot of the appraisers use school district first and foremost, and they want to make sure that the comps that you are providing are in the same school district, because a lot of property values are based upon school districts and stuff like that. So, and you have to have an explanation basically of why you want to jump over a lot of the closer comps that the appraiser is using and why your comps are better than what he used.
Yep.
I see a lot of times realtors just give us comps and they don't even really review them. They just pull MLS and give us a bunch of comps and stuff like that. So you kind of, you know, your better percentage of winning the reconsideration or the rebuttal is do some of your due diligence up front and just explain why you think this comp is better than the comp that he used, you know, in the report and stuff like that. So, I mean, that's my best suggestion for all the realtors. It's a tough time right now. I see a lot of appraisers coming in short. They're coming up above the list price, but these escalation clauses of $100,000, $50,000, it's getting a little bit crazy and stuff like that. So, you know, just be aware that when you're writing these contracts that, you know, the appraiser is using what you're using to market the properties, that he's using is basically the same comps. And I see a lot of the appraisers coming in like middling the difference a lot of times is from the list price to the actual contract price. So just be aware of that.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Just Colin, in case you didn't see it, there were quite a few messages in the chat. Thanks so much.
Oh.
This was great, very valuable. Lots of people want that information. So just a reminder also to everyone on this Zoom, please send me or Mike emails, quentin.hardy@movement.com, michael.natter@movement.com, and we're happy to forward you the information that Colin will be sharing. And if you are looking for a replay of this, feel free to reach out to me directly and I'll let you know where to find it, and Mike will do the same. If you have any other questions, oops, one new message. Thank you. This was great. Much appreciated. Okay, so lots of good stuff. All right, so I normally ask that we present value, but by the comments, I can see that a lot of you got a lot out of this. So very happy that was the case. And with that, we're going to sign off. So.